My name's Travis Ray. I head up sales and marketing and culinary at Brava Home.
And my name's Zach Selman. I'm the head of product at Brava Homes.
Travis, Zach, it is great to have you here on Double Tap. And also, it was wonderful to meet your guys in person at CSUN. Look, first off, let's talk about Brava and the company and the brand and the product. Give us a sense of what the company is for those who are unaware of it.
So Brava is a smart countertop oven, but it's a little bit different from most other ovens and countertop ovens because we cook with infrared light. We use lamps that were originally designed for the solar industry to weld silicon wafers to solar panels, and they're really unique because they go from ambient to full power in less than a second, and they shut off just as quickly, just like a light bulb. So that gives us some unique cooking advantages over traditional ovens, which use heater coils or gas to heat up. Traditional ovens are slow to heat up and slow to cool down, but really good at holding radiant heat in the chamber. But Brava's different because we're cooking with essentially what's like a spotlight. There's 3 lamps on the bottom and 3 on the top, and they're housed in these V-shaped reflectors. And when the lamp goes on at full power, it's like you have the power equivalent of a 900-degree wood-fired pizza oven, even though the air temp is relatively much lower than you would see in a traditional oven. And that's because instead of putting the energy into the walls of the oven and into the air, we're using the energy from the lamp to pump that energy directly into the food itself. And so essentially what we're doing with Brava is the lamps give us 2 unique cooking advantages. One is searing power. So Brava can sear steaks and pork chops and any other kind of protein in ways that you would only be able to do like in a cast iron pan. You can never sear a steak just by itself in an oven. It doesn't work. The other unique advantage is that because the lamps go on and off instantly, we create what we call 3 independent cooking zones within the same cooking chamber. So you can cook with Brava up to 3 different ingredients at the same time, but with totally different levels of doneness. Like you can cook a steak in zone 2 with potatoes in zone 1 and broccoli in zone 3, and the steak's going to come out seared and done to the preference that you selected. The potatoes will be browned and tender and cooked through, and the broccoli or the asparagus or whatever green vegetable you've chosen will be bright and nicely tender. So it's like having a sheet pan meal, but it's optimized for each of the different ingredients that go onto the tray.
Wow, I've got to say, guys, my stomach is rumbling right now. Just at the conversation we're having around the food, that's possible to be prepared in this. It's interesting to me because I've heard of these countertop oven type design things before, but I've never really thought of them as anything more than exactly that. It's very similar to your standard oven, but this is not. This is quite different, Zach. You've gone for something totally different here.
Yeah, the joke we make is that most of the smart ovens are basically a touchscreen on a toaster oven. It's still the same kind of traditional heating elements. But with these lamps, we can do things that are just very different. It's even in the 3 zones, like Travis is talking about. It's important to realize that it's not that we're cooking each zone at a fixed temperature for a certain amount of time, because the lamps are full power instantly, but then they're not retaining a lot of heat and they turn off. We can basically pulse them and turn them on and off. So, for example, if you had a 900-degree pizza oven and you put a tray of broccoli into it, it's going to burn on the outside before it can cook all the way through. But because of this kind of flexibility, this agility that we have with the lamps, we can hit them at 900 degrees. And then just before the surface starts to burn, we turn off the lamps. And then we turn it on, turn it off, and we pulse it to maintain the surface temperature just below where it would start to burn. And by doing that, you can kind of cook as fast as the physics will allow the temperature to diffuse to the center of the food. Um, and so by doing these kind of pulsing, like when we do the 3 zone cook that Travis was talking about, it'll actually cook more like a chef would, where it'll sear the top and then sear the bottom and then back off and let it start resting to temperature while doing light pulses to gradually bring it to the doneness that you want. And then meanwhile, it'll be pulsing the potatoes. And so it's just really flexible use of how we're applying heat to the food, and then that's all driven by software. So we've got 9,000 recipes that are controlling the lamp pulses for each of the different recipes that you want to cook. There's a camera inside the oven that'll actually stream what you're cooking to a phone that we used early
Wow.
on to really help dial in all the cooking. Because when we first started cooking with this, right, cooking with light is not something that people do. There's not 100 years of recipes for how you cook by flicking a light switch on and off with these super powerful bulbs. So Travis and his culinary team had to do tons of trial and error to figure out how this thing worked. Goofy things like, broccoli versus cauliflower that'll cook normally it's kind of the same way in an oven, because the broccoli is dark and the cauliflower is white and more reflective. It actually reflects more of the energy and cooks differently when you're cooking with light. So there was a bunch of testing that went into figuring out and kind of optimizing the best ways to leverage this heating technology.
I'm guessing this is a healthy way of cooking as well, right? I mean, air fryers are very popular at the moment. They've become extremely popular. Certainly in the country I live in the UK, everyone talks about them. We even have TV shows and TV channels dedicated to air fryers. No joke. Welcome to Britain. This is a healthy option,
Ye-
Zach.
So, I mean, I think the most important thing about the healthiest part about this is just being able to eat fresh
Mm.
meals and not doing takeout as much. Anything that you're cooking at home with fresh ingredients is generally going to be healthier. And the big reasons that people are buying lots of takeout or frozen meals or just unhealthy meals, a lot of the time comes down to time, convenience, confidence, right? So anything that you can do that kind of removes some of those barriers just leads to cooking at home more frequently, which is going to be healthier. From the actual healthiness of cooking with light, you do not need, because of the power, you do not need to use the same amount of like oil or fats, and you can still get delicious results because it's strong enough to get the kind of caramelization, like the Maillard reaction that you get from good roasted foods. Um, it also it tastes really good because when you can cook fast like that, there's less time for the natural moisture and flavor of the vegetables or the meats to evaporate out. So foods tend to be much juicier, which makes them more flavorful, and they retain more nutrients because of that.
So, Travis, talk me through this then. So, if I'm cooking a meal, am I kind of presetting this in a way? I'm deciding what I want to have. Am I able to say, here's what I have in the store cupboard, here's what I have in the fridge right now. I want to make something with this, or is it a case of I'm looking at the recipe and then designing the meal around that to say, right, okay, if I want steak and I want potatoes and I want broccoli, for example, then that's what I'll go get and that's what I'll make, and the machine does what it does.
It's a little bit of both, actually. The former that you described of having the ability to sort of look in your fridge and pick three ingredients really came a little bit later in Brava. I think that was always part of the original vision of being able to take anything you wanted to cook and be able to put it onto the tray. But in the early days of Brava, like when we launched back in the fall of 2018, I think we launched with about 100 recipe programs. And we pushed new recipe programs to it every week, and we had to figure out the right balance in the beginning from having very simple programs like roasted broccoli or roasted potatoes, which we at that time were calling sort of an ingredient program, versus a recipe program, which were things like full on recipes like chicken cacciatore and other type recipes that you would see in cookbooks, for example. So when we originally had developed a large base where we had hundreds of vegetables and a bunch of different protein cooks. And then what we did, Zach's team was really pivotal in this and helping us organize the back end, and he can describe more of that. But what we did was essentially overnight, with a software update, we launched 7,000 plus recipe combinations. And that was your essential way of being able to say, I have chicken and bell peppers, and onions. And the new update when we did that, which I think that was called V2, right, Zach? Um,
Yeah, it's inside baseball there, but yeah. So we updated.
yeah, so but it was a huge software update that then gave you a user interface that allowed you to, it says kind of like, what do you want to cook? And you can enter one ingredient, it will find that ingredient, and then there's a plus sign, and you can add a couple of other ingredients to it. This really works best when you're talking about proteins and fresh vegetables. A lot of people ask us, oh, well, then can I do a chicken breast with rice and an enchilada? It's not like that. You really need to be thinking of it as a protein and a couple of different vegetables. Or if you're vegetarian, you could pick three different vegetables.
Mm.
But it's sort of like paint by zones with the ingredients that you want to cook is completely possible. But in addition to that, we have about 1,000 other recipe programs that are more traditional type recipes.
Yeah, you're not short of choice for sure.
Yeah, we wanted you to be able to use it in any way. Um,
And beyond the recipes, we also have what we call manual modes. So we have a bake mode where you can set a time and temp and basically cook anything, any traditional oven recipe that you want. We have an air fryer mode that lets you translate air fryer recipes. We've got a slow cooker. We've got a rice cook mode. We've got what we call reheat, which is awesome. It's basically like a it's like cooking, reheating something with a microwave. It takes maybe a minute longer, but because it's infrared heat, it actually crisps it up. So like if you have to reheat leftover pizza, it's maybe a minute longer than it would take in a microwave, but it actually comes out crispy and fresh and delicious. We have a sear mode, which is basically an on-demand power broiler, but you can also broil from top or bottom. And so using those manual modes combined with the preset recipes that we have, mixing and matching those, you can kind of cook almost anything. What's actually cool with that too is then we have what we call our custom cooks, where in a kind of modular way, you can stack any combination of manual modes or the Brava recipes and add them, step by step and save them out as your own recipe.
Oh, that's cool.
And then we have like a whole community where you can save them, if you've got your mom's lasagna recipe, so you can program that in so it's one touch the next time you want to make it. But then you can optionally share that with the community. And so we have people that are making recipes that we never would have thought of and sharing them with the community and that are getting downloaded and used
Oh, that's
that by
cool.
thousands of people out there. Yeah, we had one user that figured out how to make clarified butter ghee without having to stir it. He just throws two sticks of butter, he kind of melts it and then lets it settle, and then melts it and then lets it settle, and comes out clarified. And it's been downloaded thousands of times and it's cooked hundreds of times a week. And it's something that we never would have thought to do. And by kind of opening up these tools to the community, just finding new use cases for it, which has been really fun.
And this is the next bit I want to get to, because a lot of people will be listening to this right now saying, okay, this all sounds wonderful. How accessible is it going to be to blind
Yeah.
people, right? That's
Yeah,
the first question. We're all like, it sounds okay,
Yeah,
but
what are
how
we
is that
doing
going to
here?
work? Yeah. So you've been working on this because, look, we met you at CSUN, and that's where my interest was piqued. And tell us the story. Tell us the story of how accessibility became part of your vision here.
For sure. So we didn't know anything about accessibility or assistive technology when we started. We started out just trying to make cooking at home easier, faster, more delicious, kind of for everyone. Um, and it wasn't until kind of a couple years in we started hearing stories initially from older folks and aging in place. One of the first stories I remember hearing was a couple that had been married 50 years, and the wife had cooked every meal for them for 50 years, and then she had a stroke and was unable to cook, and her husband had no idea how to cook, and they were ordering DoorDash every night. Um, and then their children bought them a Brava, and they just called us to tell us how happy they were because they were able to start cooking again and having healthy meals at home. Um, and that kind of just got us thinking, and we started reaching out and working with some assisted living and some aging in place and kind of learning. And then we started seeing a bunch of sales from this business in Massachusetts, and we're primarily direct to consumer. So we're like, what's going on? We reached out to them, and it turned out they were an AT agency working with folks with developmental disabilities, primarily with autism, trying to help people live independently. And they kind of explained how they were using Brava, and we started to realize that a lot of these features that we built that are kind of great for everyone. The fact that there's no preheat, the automatic shut off, the fact that it stays cool to the touch, that it's totally guided automated recipes, like a lot of these safety and convenience and automations, they're great for everybody. But for people that have different challenges in the kitchen, they kind of take on an elevated level of importance. Um, and then because it's driven by software, we can update it and make it better. Um, so we went to our first ATIA and CSUN last year. And that's where we first heard from folks that the least accessible part of the oven was the touch screen, and that didn't really work for people that are blind and low vision. It's also where we first met. Um, so we're from the Bay Area, from San Francisco. We had to fly all the way to Florida to meet the folks from the San Francisco Lighthouse for the blind and visually impaired. But they're the first people that showed me a screen reader on a cell phone, and they walked me through how it worked. And it got us thinking. And so we spent all of last year rebuilding all 9,000 of our recipes, rebuilding the full back end, so that you could control everything on the oven using the phone through VoiceOver and TalkBack. And we worked with the folks from the Lighthouse in San Francisco and launched that just at the end of last year. And so we're really excited about that.
That's amazing. And it's amazing to hear the story because, it's a common story, if I'm honest. I hear from a lot of companies who almost find out about the potential audience that could buy their product. You say you kind of learned about this, obviously, through the conversations people had with you. I always find it interesting, when you're building these products in the initial stages, I guess if you don't know about disability and you don't really understand disability, you wouldn't think about even how to build it for someone who's disabled, right? It just wouldn't even factor in your mind.
You don't know what you don't know. And that was one of the things that why we went to ATIA and why we went to CSUN. And when we first started working with the folks at Proven Behavior Solutions, the agency in Massachusetts. And since then, what we've been trying to do is partner with more of these agencies where not only can we help train them and think through solutions for different use cases, because everybody's different and everybody's needs are different, right? But that's also how we get the feedback coming to us, and so where we learn more about this, and we can't fix what we're not aware of, but then the more that we're aware of, like, we can start thinking about different ways we can approach it and different things that we can do to try to accommodate or support more different use cases.
And to sell to more people, right? I mean,
and to sell
what
to more
business doesn't want to sell products, right?
Totally. I mean, it's one of those. It is one of those things that, especially when you're at CSUN or something like that, and you're talking to folks, and you meet the most amazing people at these conferences, and you want to help as much as you can. And so, like, you don't want to charge people that are having, on fixed incomes and things like that. So it's a blend there where it's like you don't want anybody being locked out because of it. But
I will say that that's an interesting perspective, right? Because that is a really interesting perspective, because I've heard this a lot from people, and I understand it, and we absolutely are a community that is majority unemployed, right? A lot of us are living off the state because that's the reality we live in.
Yeah.
But there's the other side of the coin, which is I want some level of access and some level of agency and choice. The more products that are accessible to me, then I have more choice. I can choose to buy it or not buy it. But if it's inaccessible in the first place, I definitely can't buy it. So
100%. And it's not stopping me, like we totally want to do it. Right. it's not the I guess I don't want it to come off that it's purely a money grab, right? That's not the only reason that we're putting this time into it. We do very much want to open doors and
Yeah,
give people
but
access to things
can
that
I
they
just say,
right.
guys, honestly, I don't think it's a bad thing to say, do you know what, a company wants to make money, right? I think that's absolutely
Yes,
fine.
yes,
So,
yeah,
I'm all for it. Look, at the end of the day, if it's a great product and it's going to work for me, then I want to buy it. I just want that product to be accessible. And ideally, what I don't want, and this is the thing, for a lot of blind people, there are only options available are talking devices or specifically built devices, which often cost just as much, and they're less functional. They maybe don't last as long. And that's the thing. We want the same as everyone else. It's the iPhone phenomenon, as I call it. The iPhone is the most accessible device out there. Other smartphones too, right? But the iPhone was first, and it was the first device that I was able to pick up and go out to a store and buy like anybody else. I was using the same device as everyone else. I paid the same price as everyone else.
Mhm.
That's what equality should look like. It shouldn't be, well, it has to cost more. It should cost the same, and it should be available. That's the dream. And so that's why I love what you're doing. And that's why I was so keen to get you on the show.
well, and the other thing that I've kind of realized going through this process is that um adding a lot of these more accessible features uh aren't only improving the product for people that are blind or low vision, right? Like improving the accessibility of the interface and of the product is making it more accessible and a better experience for everyone, right?
Yep.
Again, it comes down to understanding user needs and use cases and being aware. But the more aware of different needs and use cases, it just makes you better at designing the product and making it a more um, useful and accessible product for all users.
Yeah, I think it's made us better at articulating instructions too for all users by being able to work with the blind and low vision community has improved our ability, I think, to communicate with everybody. And I think also when we realized that there were disabled people that were getting becoming independent by cooking with Brava at home, it seemed like just a natural extension of our original mission to help people cook with convenience and ease. And we wanted Brava to be kind of like a chef on your countertop. Um, and then I would just encourage any other entrepreneur that works in the software space that if you're working in a thing like software, like Brava or like an iPhone, you certainly can make it accessible. And you should think about that from the beginning if you're just starting out. Uh,
Yeah, that's one of the things that I wish there's certain things like right now, Brava does require sighted assistance for the initial setup because you can't download the software, connect the oven to Wi-Fi
Yeah, so
without.
let's dig into that a little bit, because so you guys very kindly sent me over a Brava unit, and it's not available in the UK at the moment. I should point that out. Um, I had to buy a box to plug the thing into, to plug it into the wall. So a very complicated thing, but it works, and that's the important thing. And the setup, you're absolutely right. So the device itself has a button on the right hand side of it, on the top. It's like all on the top, and then you have a touch screen in the middle. And that touchscreen is inaccessible at the moment. Is there any way you can make that accessible? No, because I guess you don't have a speaker in there, do you?
So it's a couple of different issues for making that accessible. We do have a speaker, but it's more for like sound effects. It doesn't have it doesn't have much bass response, and so it doesn't
Mm.
do um, very understandable spoken voices. Um, and two, because it's just our custom UI and OS. Like there's not um, uh, there's not the accessible features within the OS that is running the UI on that
Oh, I see. So
device.
it's not got like it's not running Android, so it's not,
It's
you
not
couldn't
running
like drop back
Android.
on it, or right? Okay.
Exactly. It's just a custom Linux distribution that we built
Okay.
to run on that. So uh, it would be really hard to do that way. I've looked into some, um, companion devices that could maybe sit alongside it that could handle some of it, but um, once you start going down that path, it's the fact that iPhone and Android have those integrations and people are so used to them, and it's just the fastest and kind of cleanest way to integrate with that.
That's right. So the
Um,
setup process is setting it up, getting it connected to the network, and then
exactly.
connecting it to your smartphone. And once you've got that setup done, which does require, as you say, sighted assistance in those initial steps, once it's connected, you're controlling it all from your smartphone, correct?
Correct. Yes. Um, where I mean, we just launched this. There's still a couple. I'd say that we're 95+% there in terms of features. There's still like some random settings for adjusting like the frequency of notification chimes, or there's
Mm.
some things that we haven't gotten control into the app, and so we're still adding things. But being able to control and do any of the cook processes, that's all controllable via the app currently. Um, and in terms of the initial connection, getting back to what we were talking about, and if I had known about this and been planning it from the get-go, I probably could have figured out a way of getting the device connected from the app using Bluetooth. It's not super easy, but I'm confident that I can do it. It's just hard for me now because we've already manufactured and flashed the software onto the ovens, and I can't get inside the boxes to update it. So we're still planning and looking into it, but it's again just one of those things where if we'd been planning these products and been thinking about some of this stuff from the beginning, it would be um, easier and faster to solve those, putting with a little bit of thought earlier on in the process.
Yeah, look, there are people who may shoot you down for that. There are others who'll say, "Do you know what? You're being honest. You're being transparent," and I think that's the best we can hope for. Quite frankly, you admit yourself. Look, you didn't know about this when you started out. If you did, you'd have done it differently. But that's okay, right? We're here now, and you're at the accessibility party. It's a fun place with nice people here,
It certainly is.
and that's
Keystone
the
was
thing.
wild, man.
Absolutely, yeah, it is wild. Travis, everything you've talked about in terms of the cooking, we can do that through the app, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, that was the big thing that we had to do before we actually implemented the voiceover, was to get all of the manual modes available on the Brava app. And you can almost think of each of those manual modes as like its own little independent iPhone app, whether that's bake or custom cook or sear or any of those 10 plus manual modes that are on there.
Talk to me about price, because it's available only in the US at the moment. Is that right?
US and Canada.
US and Canada. Okay.
Yeah, we have 4 different packages. The core technology is the same. The Brava unit is the same in each of them. They each have the same touchscreen and cooking capabilities. The only difference is the number of accessories, or the bundles of accessories that come with it. Brava's unique because most ovens have a wire rack and use your own cookware, but because we're guaranteeing people consistency and perfection anytime they press the green button for an automated cook, we have to control as many variables as possible. And so Brava uses its own proprietary cookware and accessories that slide into the rails of Brava. So the price starts at $1,295 for the starter set. The next set is the bacon breakfast that includes 3 pieces of bakeware plus an egg tray so that you can make fried eggs or poached eggs. 4 eggs in as little as like 4 minutes. And then the next set after that is called the Chef's Choice, which used to be the most popular set. That has all of the accessories plus a enameled cast iron chef's pan. It's essentially a Dutch oven that you can use to make rice and stews and things like that. And then in 2023, we launched and that Chef's Choice set is $16.95. In 2023, we launched Brava Glass, which has a glass door. The original Brava has a metal door. But customers asked, we didn't really need a glass door from the beginning because of the camera, but customers asked us for it. And so the Brava glass came out in 2023. It includes all the accessories I just mentioned, plus some extra trays, plus a wireless temp sensor, which took us a few years to develop. And that set is $19.95.
We're working to try to get it to the UK too. Like it's the only reason we're not there yet is just trying to get through all of the energy efficiency hurdles. So working on that as we speak. We actually had meetings about it yesterday.
Yeah, UK and Europe regulations, they're just a barrel load of laughs, I can only imagine. All available direct from you, right? All available from Brava Direct.
Yeah, just www.brava.com. You can also find it on Amazon. We're at Williams-Sonoma online, Wayfair and Paragold online, and a few independent appliance dealers as well.
Yeah, go check out the website, because honestly, not just the oven, but the accessories. If you love your accessories, and I love accessories, then you're going to be plentiful of choice in there. Zac and Travis, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for
Thank you. It was great.